We'll start with our first set of projections for the 2025 season, all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Almost said 24. Almost got me. I'm going to do it one of these days. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. What else do I usually say? We're available on YouTube. I forgot that part because I derailed my own train of thought with the comment about what year it was. Great. We're here. Welcome in, everybody. I am back in the wonderful city of Detroit, back home. Today, we are going to take our first look at some 2025 projections. These are fangraphs, ZiPS projections. Now, a few different things that I'm going to get out ahead of, and we're just going to talk about right now so that we can lay the groundwork and have a nice, fun, flowing conversation the rest of the episode and talk about these numbers. But I do want to put these out there because I read comments every single year that say the same thing when we talk about projections. So I just want to establish some foundation here, okay? I am not a big projections down to one number type of person. That's what these are. I do not use them to evaluate players too terribly often. That is me personally. That does not mean it's like I think it's stupid to do so or anything like that. If you're big into the, steamer projections, ZiP projections, I mean, Prospectus has their own, Pacoda projections we talk about every year. There's a ton nowadays, right? I have no issue with you using them. I'm just not big on them. But we do have this conversation every year because of that, because it causes conversation. And that is interesting. And that is really fun to talk about. And I think it is nice to get a baseline for what the kind of national media will call it. I think it's fair to call fangraphs that at this point. Is how they are viewing your baseball team, right? I don't want to always look at this through, tigered striped glasses. I think it's important to get kind of the national perspective and some other people's point of view, some analytics, some numbers point of view, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not an end all be all. This does not mean that we're saying this. And I think that entails that, and that means rather that, Riley Green's going to have exactly the season that's put up here. But I think it's a nice starting point to have so that we can say, do we agree or disagree? Do we think he's going to be better or worse? Do you think the team is going to be better or worse? How about this positional group? I think it's a nice thing to kind of start off with in, again, January, when all of this is very fluid and will change plenty throughout the year. Okay, so first off, I want to give credit to Dan Szymborski, who does these ZiPS projections, I believe, creator, but if he's not the creator, then he kind of runs the ZiPS show. I'm pretty sure he is, however, and has been doing this for years, kind of does a team-by-team breakdown. A few things. The Tigers actually, their ZiPS projections came out a few weeks ago before they had even signed Gleyber Torres, so he is not a part of this, but we can kind of factor him into the equation a little bit. We'll take a look at the offensive numbers, the positional groups, the pitching, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to start off with the outfield because I think that for me personally, when I think of the 2025 Detroit Tigers, I think of a team that could have a really, really dynamic and talented outfield. I'm talking like at its ceiling, one of the best outfields in the American League and potentially, I guess I'll say one of the best in baseball, but where's the cutoff for that? I don't think they're going to be the best outfield in baseball. But if you think that one of the best is top 7, I think that's absolutely on the table. You're talking about Riley Green in the corner, ZiPS has him at 3.5 WAR. 3.5 win player, according to, this is obviously Fangraphs WAR, goes without saying because ZiPS is part of Fangraphs, as we said at the top of the show. In right field, they have Winfield Perez and Matt Vierling, which I think is very interesting. And they have the total production between those two players at 1 WAR. In center field, very obviously, Parker Meadows. They have up to 2.2 WAR. Now, those numbers in a vacuum aren't anything that really jump out the page at you, right? I mean, anytime you're eclipsing, 3.5 WAR, you're talking about a guy who's probably going to be pretty darn good. So Riley Green, as we know, is a fantastic baseball player. But those three combined is what? 3.5, 2.2. That's 5.7 plus 1. So 6.7. You're talking about fewer than 7 WAR among your outfield. It's, I think it's a little low. I think that's kind of where I stand on it. Now, one of the big reasons why I think it's low is because Dan and the ZiPS projections have Kerry Carpenter as pretty much exclusively a DH. They don't have him playing too much outfield. He will. And that is another thing that you have to take into account with these formulas and projections is there is no nuance in numbers. And that is why you do have to take these with a grain of salt, and they're not the end all be all, because obviously baseball is a lot of factors into everything. And so I think Kerry Carpenter at DH is almost pushing 2 WAR. That's a guy that's not going to get credit for defense, and ZiPS has him at almost 2 wins. That is a heck of a hitter if you're getting that type of production without contributing anything defensively. So you put Kerry Carpenter in right field, and you make him honestly around a net zero defender. Even if you're still a little pessimistic on the defense, you can make him slightly negative, but he's improved a ton since the days of, early on Kerry Carpenter, where we're talking about a guy that was, a negative astronomical, -8 or whatever it was the first 3 months, his OAA of his major league career. And ever since then, he's been on a positive kind of increase in his defensive production. So you move him to right field, you get that production out there. You can also increase the WAR because you are getting defensive production there. And I think it's honestly low on Meadows. Now, I don't think 2.2 is the projection. I don't think that's offensive, right? I mean, this is a guy that really has been as dynamic of a player as I have wanted him to be, and as been this extremely valuable asset for the Tigers. Really, I mean, you can just say at the major league level, period, for 2 months. So I understand not just being we saw it for 2 months. He's just going to be, a 4-win player this year. I totally understand, but I continue to believe that if Parker Meadows is fully healthy, that he is going to be one of the more valuable center fielders in the American League. I genuinely believe that is the ceiling of him. I think Riley Green is in a very similar conversation in left field. If he stays healthy, he is going to be one of the more valuable outfielders in the American League. Kerry Carpenter has the potential to be one of the better hitting outfielders in the American League. I just said that about potentially all 3 of your outfielders, which is why I'm so optimistic about what this outfield can be for the Tigers in 2025, and why I think that this WAR total, really, no matter how you slice it, is low. And I would think it's not only higher, but pretty comfortably higher. And I'd be interested in going back at the end of 2025 and seeing how far off that comment is in January. Let's go to the infield, because there's a lot more questions there. We know about Gleyber Torres and the move of Colt Keith and whatnot. We know that shortstop is kind of a bleep show at the moment. And third base is a question mark. So let's go over what ZiPS has the Tigers infield looking like as it stands right now. We will do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Rocket Money. That's who we're talking about today. We love our friends over at Rocket Money. They helped me find subscriptions that I forgot about or that I was paying for even twice in some cases. That definitely, again, happened to me. And I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant all in your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features, again, is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel several services that I just wasn't using anymore and totally forgot that I was still paying for. I saved a ton. Plus, they have their new goals feature, which lets you automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Friday, recapping the week that was, talking about all the news and notes. We'll talk about Verlander then. I don't really have too much to say about it. He signed a contract with the San Francisco Giants. People are all up in arms because it's a similar contract or the same, whatever amount of money that we gave Alex Cobb. I think that's a brash overreaction by part of the fan base. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth on Friday and hopefully pair it with some other news that happens between now and then. Today, we are talking about Fangraphs ZiPS projections for the Detroit Tigers in 2025. I want to talk about the infield. So let's go trip down memory lane here. Let's go back to 2024. The ZiPS projections last year at this time for the season that just ended had Torkelson at over a 2-win player, which is wild considering that, again, Kerry Carpenter at DH this year is fewer than 2 wins. Torkelson was 2.1 F4 projected this time a year ago at first base. The mighty platoon of Keith, Ibanez, McKinstry, and even Jace Young, 1.6 F4 out of second base. Javi Baez, 1.3 at shortstop, and Matt Vierling, 0.6 at third. That's with Zach McKinstry and Tyler Nevin and whatnot. So that was 2024. Okay. 2025, I think there are some notable differences. One, Torkelson down almost a win, down to 1.3 Fangraphs WAR projected at first base. Again, this was before Gleyber Torres, so we don't have his. We can go look at the Yankees one because that's where he'll end up being. But Torkelson at first base would be projected to get 1.3. Colt Keith up to a 2-win player, just shy, 1.9 F4, which I think is really encouraging. And you hope that with the transition to first base, if he is even able to hold his own there, which I don't want to even beat this dead horse again. We've talked about the potential of his defense at nauseum on this show. I don't want to bore the people that do tune in every day with just the exact same conversation about his defense all the time. But he has the athleticism. He has the glove work ability. He has the footwork ability. It's just all about feel and whether he's going to be able to naturally kind of transition over there and look like a sound defender. And I think that there is a decent chance he does that. Now, he's never played first base at any level of professional baseball, maybe even his entire life, considering he was probably the best player on his team growing up. I'd imagine he played a lot of shortstop. So I'm not sure he's ever played first base for a prolonged period of time. So we will see how he looks. But if the offense goes up, we'll talk about the offense specifically here in a second. And if the defense isn't a catastrophic failure over at first, you're talking about a guy that could, I think, be a 2, even 2.5 win player over at first base. And the higher the offensive ceiling goes, then that number obviously continues to get higher and higher. We're going to go to third first. Okay. Who's on first? What's on second? We're going to go to third before we go to shortstop. We're going to save shortstop for last. I guess catcher last, but like that's not very climatic. So third base is interesting because ZiPS actually has Jace Young getting the most reps at third base. And I've had a lot of people in the comment section of this show mention, why don't I bring up Jace Young as much as they think I should in these third base conversations? I'm very kind of tunnel visioned on it's going to be Matt Vierling or Alex Bregman, really, at this point. And I think that is very fair. Now, if I haven't done a great job articulating that, then that's totally on me. He is obviously one of the higher ranked, if not the highest ranked third base, pure third base. Well, he's not even pure third base. He came up as a second baseman, prospecting the organization. I do think that Jace Young will improve offensively this year. But I have serious doubts and concerns about whether he is going to be a legitimate everyday third baseman going forward. If I had to put money on it right now, I would say he wouldn't. That doesn't mean he won't be a productive Major League Baseball player or a good productive second baseman. But I have seen nothing from him at third base between the arm and the range and the athletic ability that leads me to believe the Tigers are going to be comfortable leaving him as the everyday set it and forget it third baseman of the future. And on top of that, he hasn't hit yet at the major league level. Now, again, I think he will, but like that you're 0 for 2, right? Like he was not productive on either side of the ball in his short stint in the majors last year. You cannot just hand over the keys when you're trying to improve to a guy that is unproven all around at every aspect of Major League Baseball, really, which is what they would be doing if Jace Young was to be the primary third baseman. So I disagree that he will be the lead in games played, barring injury. It's almost certainly Matt Vierling or a current free agent. Zach McKinstry obviously going to log some reps there because he always will. And then Vierling obviously is the second most playing time over at third base. They have it 1.9 WAR. Now that is a huge step up from the 0.6 catastrophe that was the projected 2024 third base number. And obviously they exceeded expectations there. I think Matt Vierling surprised some people with, not that he was an all-star or some incredible third baseman, but I think he was better than people thought, maybe even myself included. So I think that probably goes a long way. And then obviously just the natural, like you're hoping and banking on Jace Young hitting more at the major league level, which I, again, think he will for the third time now. Shortstop is 1.6. It's Trey Sweeney getting more playing time than Javi Baez, which I think will probably make some people smile. I mean, I have serious concerns about whether either of them will be able to hit at the major league level consistently this year. But Trey Sweeney was obviously a huge part and played a huge role in the Tigers' run in the second half of 2024. I think he's fine defensively, right? He's probably going to be a little bit of a negative defender at shortstop, just because that's such a hard position to be a positive defender at. But if he hits 9 and has an OPS over like 410, which is what like Javi was doing at times for, the first half of last year, then like nobody's really going to care. Like it's going to be very hard for this fan base to turn on Trey Sweeney, I guess is my point. Like he's really in a position where it's very hard for him to get criticism because the front office can just go, oh, really? You don't want Trey Sweeney? Okay, here's 2 months of Javi Baez. Have fun. And then tell me about how much you dislike Trey Sweeney. It's I don't know, between a rock and a hard place there. And that sounds like I'm kind of like ragging on Sweeney. There's potential. There's a former first round pick. Like I think that there is potential. He just swings and misses so much. He has such a loopy long swing that he is always like, he's going to have to cut his K rate significantly for me to be like, all right, this dude could turn into a like first round pick value. So we'll see what happens with shortstop, but it's going to be those two. It's probably going to be a platoon and they'll probably, muster together a 1-2 WAR in 2025 and whatever. We'll take it. Catcher, Rogers and Dingler, 3.2 FWAR at catcher. Boom, boom, boom. The catcher in me absolutely loves to see the second most valuable position on the diamond for the Tigers in 2025 projected to be the catcher position. A bounce back year from Rodgers offensively, really good defense from Rodgers, obviously defensively, and then Dingler being a lot closer to what we think he can be offensively, while also being a big-time positive defender as well. As I mentioned, DH, Kerry Carpenter, also a little bit of love for Justin Henry Malloy there, but 1.8 F4 out of that position. All of this, what does all that mean? We'll get to the pitching after the break here. All of that is to say that right now, ZiPS has the Tigers around 500. And as Dan mentions in his article, which you should all go read on Fangraphs, go support his work. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter, X, whatever. And he does these articles for all 30 teams, ZiPS breakdown every single offseason. It is an awesome read. It's a great way to kind of learn about where the general consensus is on a lot of players throughout baseball. And it's always cool. We always give him a shout out when he does his Tigers article every year. So go support that. In his article, he mentions that in the AL Central, even though it was obviously a lot better this past year, a team that is around 500 that, has some upside or could get hot for a couple of weeks in the middle of a season is a threat. And they already added Gleyber Torres since this article came out. We look at second base. I think that you can kind of pencil in Gleyber for more than 1.9 F4, which is currently what's projected from the second base position with Colt Keith and Andy Ibanez there. I think that made you more valuable. As we talked about when Gleyber Torres was signed, you didn't really replace Gleyber with Colt Keith. You more so replaced Gleyber Torres with Spencer Torkelson, even though it's not one for one the same position. And I think you certainly can pencil Gleyber in for more production than 1.3 F4. Let's talk about pitching, then we'll get to some individual offensive projections. Torkelson home run total if he plays a full season, Colt Keith offensive numbers, Parker Meadows, et cetera, et cetera. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories from 2024 was going to, honestly, just a ton of baseball games. But my roommate and I went to the Shoresy Classic, which was an absolute blast at LCA. Got our tickets through Game Time. It was unforgettable. And Game Time has made it even easier to get your tickets to your favorite live events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I'm trying to get tickets to a Pistons game. One of my best friends gave me a like Pistons kind of like bomber jacket, and I'm trying to go rep the 500 record Detroit Pistons. So pumped for the city. Go Stones, baby. And went to Game Time, and it has made it so much easier. There are amazing deals. I can see pictures of my seat before buying, and the super deal, which was particularly impressive, offered me a great seat at unbeatable prices. All-in pricing as well on the app shows your total up front. I wasn't surprised with any hidden fees at checkout or anything like that. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So talking about the pitching staff, the bullpen seems to be some optimism surrounding the Tigers bullpen, which is nice to see. Bo Brisky being one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable reliever out of the pen. I think that's probably just for an innings thing, but still good to see. Foley, Holton, Vest, Sean Gunther, Brant Herter, Kenta Maeda listed in the bullpen, not in the rotation. Good to see there. Brett Hannafy, Alex Lang, we'll talk about a little bit later. Alex Faedo, Ty Madden, Mason Englert, and Sawyer Gibson-Long back from TJ. You'll love to see it. 4.7 F4. That would have put them in pretty solid position in production this past year. And when looking at the scope of the ZiPS projections, that puts them in pretty high regard as well. So nice to see there. It's not the elite of the elite, and we've talked a lot about what I think they need to add to this bullpen to become that elite of the elite, a high strikeout, swing and miss type of reliever. Get Kirby Yates, it'd be really cool. So we will keep an eye on that situation. From the starting rotation perspective, Tarek Skubal at the top, projected almost 6 F4, which I know that's just ridiculous. Like you have to look at these projections for enough years to understand that no one is going into the season outside of Ohtani when he's playing two positions, or maybe Aaron Judge, maybe Bobby Witt Jr. this year. Not too many guys are going into the season with a projected WAR total of 9, right? They're pretty, they don't project that MVP seasons necessarily, except for, again, obviously the elite of the elite in this sport. So Tarek Skubal as a pitcher who's going to play once every 5 days to be projected to have a 6-win season is ridiculous. And it's a testament to how great he is, and everybody knows it now, and that is awesome. The second most valuable pitcher they have projected to be Reese Olson with 2.4 F4. Don't disagree with that. Then it's a tie with 1.9 between Casey Mize and Alex Cobb, Jackson Jobe at 1.1, Kader Montero 0.6, and Matt Manning 0.5. I think we can kind of all agree on the top 5 there. It's just a matter of what order. I think Alex Cobb will probably be the third starter. I think Joe will get a look. I hope he gets enough of a look to rack up a win this year. A win this year. And yeah, if we can get 2 wins from Alex Cobb, I'm thrilled. I'm a happy camper. So that's your rotation. I think there's still some help that can happen there in the back end of it, but it's also not as black and white as just 1.1 from Jackson Jobe. That's exactly what the 5th spot in the rotation will be. We saw what the Tigers do with pitching. That's just not going to be, it's not going to be that black and white. Okay. So that's it for around the diamond kind of positional groups and whatnot. I do want to go over some individual numbers I found interesting. They project exact stat lines for players. Obviously, these are not going to be exactly true, but it's nice to get, again, a general idea of kind of where the national media is with a lot of players. I found it really interesting that, if he were to play a full season and get 655 plate appearances, they do have Spencer Torkelson as the projected home run leader for the Detroit Tigers at 27, Riley Green's at 20, and nobody else is above 20. That's it. Kerry Carpenter, 19, Colt Keith, 16, Jace Young, 16, Parker Meadows, 16, Justin Henry Malloy, 15. Everybody's kind of in that 12 to 16 range for your Detroit Tigers. We take a look at OPS plus, whatever you want to say. Riley Green, 127 OPS plus. Fantastic. So they have him projected to be a 27% better than league average hitter with plus defense in corner outfield. He should have been a Gold Glove candidate this year. You're talking about a guy that could just be a perennial all-star. And he was an all-star last year. So that's really encouraging, obviously. Kerry Carpenter, a 118 OPS plus. I find fascinating. What has led you to believe, and I'm going to keep pumping the tires on Riley Green. I think he's the best all-around player on the team. I think he's going to be an all-star, and he's going to keep getting better. It is fascinating to me that in the projection here, there is almost a 10% difference in production with just OPS between Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green. Kerry Carpenter's at 118, 10% less than Riley Green. Very interesting to me. Their slugging percentages are way too close for me. Kerry Carpenter also, fewer plate appearances here. That's why he doesn't have as much as the projected home run total. I think we are really going to see in spring training what the future of Kerry Carpenter holds in terms of his usage. If there was ever a year to get him more at-bats against left-handed pitching, it is going to be the beginning of this season. He just came off a season in which he was the 4th best hitter against right-handed pitching in the sport. Let's maybe see if he can improve against lefties, or if he's even good against lefties. He wasn't a awful platoon hitter in the minors. It wasn't like it was this dramatic in the minor leagues. So we'll see what happens there. And I think that could obviously affect these numbers as well. Colt Keith, 110 OPS plus, 10% better than league average. Big time minus defender, but with the move to first base, that's going to throw that formula into a loop there. The 426 slugging percentage from Colt Keith is something I find somewhat encouraging. You know, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for more pop this year. We're looking for a little bit more I don't know, swagger. Is that like the right thing? Like, legitimately, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, confidence maybe is the word. When you watched Colt Keith in the minor leagues, you saw a guy that went up to the plate and was like, I am going to destroy this baseball. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to get my pitch because you're going to throw me my pitch and I'm going to crush it. We never really saw that, except for that one beautiful swing in Cincinnati that I love so much. We never really saw that in the majors. It was a lot of slapping the ball to the opposite way. And look, he got on base. He ended up being an around league average hitter. He got, third place for Silver Slugger at second base as a rookie. There's a lot of offensive upside there. But once that flip is switched, once that switch is flipped, I promise you are going to see the prince that was promised. Like, you are going to see the guy that we talked about for all these years about being able to crush the baseball and that everybody was so excited about and was the number one prospect in the organization. Got to get there. Hao-Yu Lee, like they project minor leaguers too, doesn't have terrible, but really bad slugging percentage, which is kind of expected, but doesn't have terrible major league projections. Really good on base percentage stuff there, which is nice to see. Justin Henry Malloy, really high OBP numbers, very kind of go figure there. Parker Meadows, below league average hitter, 16 home runs, a slug under 400 and an OBP barely over 300. I don't buy any of that. I think this is a wild just misinterpretation of the type of player that Parker Meadows is. He draws walks and he does have power. And I'm not saying 16 homers is too far off, but I am almost positive he'll have a slug over 400 just because he can stretch singles into doubles. And so I adamantly disagree with this formula's interpretation of what type of season Parker Meadows is going to have, but that's the whole point of the conversation here, and that is why we have this episode every year. We'll do it with PECOTA as well, but that'll be team to team, not player to player. So we'll take a look at the simulations and what they say each team is going to be going into the season. We'll end you on this. Javi Baez, 80 projected OPS plus, everybody. I'll tell you what. If he can play good defense and give me an 80 OPS plus and be a platoon hitter, I will take that tenfold. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shots to every dayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Friday, back into the swing of things with news and updates and notes from the Detroit Tigers. We'll talk a little bit of Verlander too. See you Friday. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all then, baby. Go Tigers.